Good evening, New Orleans, and welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we're going to talk a lot about what's going on with the New Orleans Saints, the New Orleans Pelicans, and, of course, the LSU Tigers. To discuss it and break it down for us tonight, Garland, Gillen of Fox 8 Sports and Coach Rick Gailee of 990 AM WGSO and SportsNola.com. And, gentlemen, thanks so much for being with us. Certainly appreciate you guys being on the show tonight. And we always like to let folks know a little bit about what's happening in your world. And, Garland, we'll start with you. Tell us about what's going on at Fox 8 Sports.
Well, Saints season's over with, but as you know, in NFL, it's 365 days, so we're definitely breaking down the offseason now. Mickey Loomis talked on Tuesday. We're going to be dissecting that on our final play show on Sunday night that airs at 10:30. And before you know it, it'll be the Senior Bowl, and we'll be going up there to get Sean Payton's thoughts as I know the moves have not stopped with this coaching staff and the players right now. They're going to be figuring out who they're going to keep and who they're going to let go. So we're going to keep pretty hard on NFL, and then we got LSU defensive coordinator search. We're going to be keeping them track on that. But right now it's more Pelicans because we're in basketball season. But recruiting's right around the corner. National Signing Day is February 4th, and I've been doing stories on it this week and some next week because National Signing Day is right around the corner.
Yeah, sure is. Coach, welcome back, and of course you got your hands on a whole bunch of stuff. Tell the folks where they can find you on the radio dial, on the web, and of course now on TV as well.
Well, thank you for having me, Eric. It's certainly my pleasure. With WHNO, we do a Prep Recruiting Insider with our friend Renee Nadeau. Yes. That's on Wednesday, so it's 4 weeks to signing date. We know that almost to the middle. We'll be doing a live show on signing day. Doesn't matter. Well, close to a live show. As live as we get Renee to be. That's a whole other issue. But WGSO 990 AM, the Three Tailgaters with Ken Trahan and Ed Daniels on Saturday morning, and still doing work for SportsNola.com. Getting ready to do a big analysis on turnover differential and why what the Saints can do to not only but to get that turned around in their favor.
Boy, if you can figure that out, we got a spot on the coaching staff for you, Coach.
It's quantifiable. There's reasons. The first thing you have to do in the turnover differential is you don't turn the ball over, and that's certainly coachable and within your control.
Yeah. And, of course, be nice to create those turnovers like they did in the Super Bowl season as well. Guys, Saints 7-9. We've heard a lot of things going on this week. First of all, looks like Rob Ryan is going to be back. Last week, the coaching staff was pared down a bit. Longtime tight ends coach Malone was let go. Henry Ellard, the wide receivers coach, was let go. We were hearing that Coach McGriff, who was the defensive back coach, was going to head to Vanderbilt, the defensive coordinator. There was an assistant secondary coach that was let go as well. McGriff looks like he's going to be back. We're hearing there will be some more changes on this coaching staff going forward. Garland, your take on what has transpired so far in terms of the movement within the coaching staff of the Saints?
I think it was a good move to keep Rob Ryan. It's only been 2 seasons, a lot of injuries this season. I also have heard from some sources that his contract is pretty hefty. So no reason to let him go after 2 years. You got a good investment in him. So I think he stays. Well, he's going to stay, as reported there. But the Saints have stayed hush on all these stories there. They even acknowledged on Tuesday that Malone had been gone or any of the other coaches, and McGriff possibly stay, and they didn't even mention that. So they're kind of keeping us in the dark. I heard things are tight-lipped at the facility right now, especially when you have a losing season. You want to kind of keep the message inside the facility. But I don't know if I just see any other moves. I know they say there's going to be more moves, but Joe Vitt is Sean Payton's guy. I mean, they've been together for a long time. Vitt filled in for him during the bounty scandal. They're tight, so I don't think he's going. I know there's been talk that maybe Bill Johnson, defensive line coach, could be on his way out, but because of what the defensive line it kind of underproduced this year there. Junior Gillette, Cam Jordan didn't have the seasons they wanted. But I think Bill Johnson's going to return too. So I don't know where else the big changes are going to happen. If they're saying that changes are going to happen that they just hadn't reported themselves, and they've already happened, been reported by the national media. But I don't see any other moves with Vitt or Bill Johnson right now.
Coach, what's your take, first of all, on Ryan returning, at least what has been reported about Malone, Ellard out? Obviously, that assistant secondary coach out, but McGriff sticking around. What's your take on all that? And then I want to ask you about Coach Vitt and Coach Johnson, because I don't know, when you look at this defense, I don't know how these guys can't be looked at with a microscope, considering how this defense is played and their tenure here as defensive coaches.
Right, absolutely. I to think it's good that Ryan is staying, because in the NFL, when you change a coordinator, you change everything. That affects other assistant coaches as well, and the relationships with those coaches and the new coordinator. But the language changes. When the system changes, that's what they're talking about, is that the language changes. And it slows people down if they have to think about what something means. So what has to be done right now is that you have to be able to analyze before you prescribe. I call it diagnose before you prescribe. And the Saints are in a diagnosis stage right now, so they don't want to act rashly. They want to act sanely. It's good, finally, that the message is staying in the office, because that's one of the problems they had this year, and one of the things that I'm going to look at closely going forward is that the lack of quality control within the Saints organization. I call it a lack of entropy, that you need energy in order to organize things, and the Saints officials, coaches, administration did not keep as firm a hand on the team. They did not exhibit the energy that was necessary out of them to be able to control the message, which is important in war, just as it is in football. So that's good. You're going to see more staff changes made as head coaches are announced at other teams. That's when the real shuffling of assistant coaches is going to happen. Senior Bowl week is headhunting week as well. So there's going to be some other changes, just as there always is. 20% of everything changes in the league from one year to the other. So yes, there's going to be more changes going forward.
Coach, with that said, and again, I'm sure it kind of hits home whenever you're talking about coaches losing their job, you being obviously a guy that coached for a long time on the college and high school level. But talk about Coach Johnson and Coach Vitt, who have been mainstays on this team since Peyton has come here. And you look at the defense for the most part, it's been the Achilles heel for this team. And these guys have kind of been in the mix since day one.
And it's also amazing that the assistant secondary coach may be the problem for the defensive failures.
Whoever he is.
Where the truth is stranger than fiction. Let's blame it on the assistant. Let's throw them under the bus. Joe Vitt is Sean Payton's ears in the defensive meeting room. He's not going anywhere. That's how he helps. I'm not going to say keep the reins on Rob Ryan, because that would take a pretty big rein to be able to do that. But that's where he garners a lot of his information. That Vitt reports, as they all report directly to him, but that's his ears, his eyes and ears in the defensive meeting room. Everything has got to be examined thoroughly at this particular time. In fact, one of the statements Mickey Loomis made, it was on Tuesday, kind of upset me a little bit. He said, after 7 to 9 years, I would say that there's a little more critical eye on every aspect. Because you're 7 and 9, you're going to work. It seems to me in a world-class organization where excellence is the key word, you should not have to work any harder when you're 7 and 9. Excellence is excellence all the time, and not just when things don't work. So you're telling me if they're 9 and 7, I'm not going to work as hard? I'm not going to analyze as hard as I would have because we're 7 and 9? That's nonsense. That points to me directly to the lack of quality control in this team, going all the way back, as we've talked, Eric, all the way back to training camp. It wasn't a facility that made the Saints soft, but it was the fact that the Saints didn't get the repetitions because the coaching staff and administration didn't make the players get the repetition.
Garland, Ryan Pace goes to Chicago as their general manager, was announced today. Huge loss for this team.
No doubt.
When you talk about the hierarchy of this organization, so much so there were some reports that they were going to carve out a position for him within the organization to try to make sure he would stay. Obviously, that general manager's position was too hard for him to pass up in Chicago. They seem to like ex-Saints assistants and ex-Saints front office personnel. But your thoughts on how big of a loss this is for this team?
Yeah, and the guys they picked up in the last few years, Jermon Bushrod hasn't had a great career with the Bears, and you know what happened with Aaron Kromer this year. You know he talked about Jay Cutler to the media, and then actually outed himself to the media, and wound up losing his job this season. So it hadn't worked out well for the Saints people that have been there, but I think that's going to change at Ryan Pace. I think that Ryan Pace is one of the best talent evaluators in the league. I tell you one thing, he's also a workout nut. If you ever jog in Audubon Park, he's there every day. He runs marathons. He's a triathlete. Fantastic shape. He does CrossFit with Sean Payton all the time during Saints training camp in Greenbrier. So this guy's top notch from evaluating talent to evaluating his own body there, because he's a fantastic specimen when you go between the X's and O's and in his personal life. But I think that Ryan Pace, obviously the Bears have a lot of problems, and I guarantee that Pace's first job is to decide if it's time to draft a quarterback in that first round and get rid of Jay Cutler, which is going to be a tough decision, but that's going to be the first big one for him.
Yeah, no doubt. 37, the youngest GM in the NFL right now. Your thoughts, Coach?
I hope his future is not dependent on Jay Cutler, who has killed several coaching staffs. Brian Billick was right. If we remember about 3 months ago, Brian Billick said that it reminded him of several other coach killers along the way. And lo and behold, he got another staff. So I hope his future is not tied to Jay Cutler. And if there's any way that they can make a move to get a different quarterback in, but that's the toughest decision in pro football, to get the franchise quarterback in place, to identify who that person is and get that person in place. But that's going to be absolutely critical.
How about the void on the Saints side?
Sure, and even though there's so much movement in front offices, when you look when you go to a Saints game and they have, well, these guys have been here before. Here's the commonalities, and everybody's been 2, 3, 4 places before. So that's part of the attrition. That's part of the game, that people rotate around and get promoted. 37 years old is awfully young for a general manager, but let's hope that it's because of his excellence and that he does well. You always hope that when somebody goes from one place to the other, even though it's a competitor, that they do well.
866-3200. Let's head to the phone lines. Tony is in Marrero. Tony, welcome. You're on Inside New Orleans Sports.
Thank you guys for taking my call this afternoon. I got a quick question, man. I wanted to find out, and I'm going to go ahead and ask the question and then listen to you guys' professional opinion. As an armchair quarterback and as a Saints season ticket holder for the last 10 years, I often thought at the end of this year, maybe Sean Payton and his magic of a few years ago when we went to the Super Bowl is passed him on by, kind of like when Mike Ditka was here. And the reason I say that is Sean Payton is the guy that's in the war room on draft day with Mickey Loomis, and from what I understand, these guys decide on the players that they want to pick. And I think Sean Payton has disappointed me as a Saints fan, and I bleed black and gold just like I bleed purple and gold for LSU. I believe that Sean Payton needs to take a hard look at himself in the mirror, kind of like a bad boss at work when he doesn't do his job and he wants to pass the buck off on all his employees. And the reason that I passed that comment as a Saints fan is they've been putting a lot of pressure in the media on our D coordinator, Rob Ryan. I think the man's a great coordinator. I think Sean Payton just gave him some lousy talent to play with this year. And I don't understand why the media is coming down, okay, he's getting one more year. When are we going to look at Sean Payton and say, well, you know what, you're the play caller on offense. Your offense didn't do so great either.
Tony, thank you for the phone call. Certainly appreciate it. Guys, I've crunched the numbers. With the exception of 06 and 13, an average of 2 players per draft making this team. That's unacceptable. You look at 06 and 13, they were early drafts. I understand the Saints have been drafting late. They've again augmented that with obviously undrafted free agents, about 20 of them that have made the team. But some have said that this offense is now predictable and that they're not doing the self-scouting they need to do in the offseason to get better. And then I'm even questioning what's going on in that war room when again, they're on the clock, because you can't continue to miss like they are on again, draft choices, first, second, third, fourth round draft choices, which are the lifeblood of any franchise. Garland?
Yeah, this guy made some valid points on the phone call. Brandon Cooks getting injured hurt a lot, no doubt. Ronald Powell was one of the only guys that saw a lot of work this year. Mickey said on Tuesday, Stanley Jean-Baptiste, they didn't expect that much of him this year, but fans don't want to hear that. Yeah. They want to see the guys on the field right away.
He's a second-round pick.
He for the dimensions he had, we were warned that this guy was rough, that it was going to take a lot of work. But I thought he was going to get into play this season. Right. I didn't realize he was going to
especially with all the injuries, right, Garland?
Right. You would have thought with the injuries they had at that spot.
They're pulling guys off the street.
Yeah, and those guys off the street are starting in front of him.
Yeah.
Kyrie Ford never played it down for the Saints. He got moved around to a few other franchises from the Bengals and moving on to another one. you really are disappointed this year in what happened. But as Mickey said, it's going to take a few years for some of these guys, possibly with Stinchcomb and with Meacham. They weren't big stars again. Devery Henderson. It took a little while, and I know people don't want to hear patience, but maybe with the draft picks at least, you got to have a little patience, because Brandon Cooks, they hit right on Brandon Cooks. We thought after last year they hit right on Kenny Vaccaro, but Kenny stepped backwards this season. But I still think that he's got a lot in the tank going forward. So I think the first-round picks the last few years they've hit on pretty well.
Coach, your comments on Tony's call.
First, Tony, don't confuse Sean Payton with Mike Ditka when it comes to intelligence, please. But I understand your point as well. It's not magic, it's work. And it's being productive in your work. You don't want to confuse activity with achievement. And the Saints do as thorough a job as anybody in self-scouting. Everybody's got the information. It's what you do with it and how much effort you make to be able to interpret it correctly and then make the appropriate decisions. Brandon Cooks is going to be fine as a first-round draft choice, but you cannot miss. It's a miss right now on a second-round choice, because all those people that you mentioned were in a pre-era of draft choices. Today's drafting, with only 7 rounds, first-round draft choice has got to make an impact immediately. Second-round draft choice has got to be a contributor, has got to play. Third round, fourth round, fifth round's got to play. 6, 7 may be developmental. But you can't miss. Right now, Jean Baptiste is a miss. Let's hope that he turns out to be better than that. But the Saints have got to win now. NFL is not for long. Yes, indeed. And I think Coach Payton is examining himself very closely. That's part of being a coach, that you take responsibility. Now, he cannot go out in public and just keep going over and over again that I'm to blame all the time. He did take responsibility some during the season, but after a while, if you keep blaming yourself so much, everybody's going to believe you and you're out the door. So you have to be careful.
Guys, there was an overestimation in my mind of talent, the talent level of this team, an overestimation of the maturity of this team, the professionalism of this team. That goes all the way before training camp. That goes into the draft. Right. When you look at the draft and you look at some of the guys that were drafted in the same round or the round before on the players that they chose guys that they expected to come in and be backups. They chose guys that were coming off major knee injuries that felt that maybe they needed a redshirt year. Obviously, again, they misjudged the talent they had on this team, especially as they let those veteran guys go.
Yeah, and it just the injuries. I know people there's injuries all over the NFL.
Everybody's gets
yeah. So I don't know if you could use that as the main factor for the draft class not doing well. But they got a nice sized draft pick this year. Top 15 pick. That's a guy that's gonna have to contribute right away. And they're gonna probably lose. I know we'll probably get into more detail, but a guy like Patrick Robinson, they drafted in the first round. That's probably, you would say, a miss. I guess you got to consider that's a miss.
I'll say he's a miss.
Yeah, and Cam Jordan, he's had some strong seasons. Right. He's a first-round pick. Yep. Is he a miss? Mark Ingram, he's leaving him probably.
Right.
This is the end of the
can't afford him.
Yeah, and he's a first-rounder. Is that a miss? I think Mark Ingram actually had I wouldn't say a great career, but he did well with the Saints. But in the long run, he's not going to be here in the end.
Right. Last year and a half, he's been a productive back, no doubt. Right. Coach, what can you add?
Young and stupid are attached at the hip. And last year, the Saints decided, and rightfully so, that they had to get younger and more athletic. And so you saw some of the fruits of that. But what the coaching staff did not do was make up for the errors that were going to be made. The coaching staff had to become the leaders. Because you look at the people that the Saints let go after last year. 2 years ago, when they had the historic worst defense in the history of the world, those guys were playing.
Yes.
And most of them didn't play anywhere else in the league moving forward. Some did nice jobs other places, but overall really did not have a huge impact in other places. Coaching staffs have got to be able to identify what the personality of a team is and then be able to get that team to accomplish. Coaches make players do what they need to do so they can be what they want to be. And the verb make is the one that determines how successful a coaching staff is with a team. You sometimes have to make a player or make a team. Sometimes you can let them, sometimes you can lead them, sometimes you can show them. So the personality of the team determines the verb of what the coaching staff has to do. And you're exactly right. They did a not a great job, sometimes a poor job of understanding what the personality of this team was and what they had to do as a coaching staff to be the leader of a very young team that's going to make a ton of errors.
Gentlemen, this offense, in my opinion, is no longer feared in the NFL like it was when Peyton came on board. The offensive line has aged right before our very eyes. You've got some hefty pay checks coming to Grubbs and also Jari Evans. Evans just underwent surgery. It'll be interesting to see again who takes a pay cut, who's asked, who is ultimately as a cap casualty there. When you look at the offensive whole, Garland, I'll take you first. What do they have to do to get back to that Peyton offense that was mimicked around the league and also was feared around the league?
Well, I think Ben Grubbs, if you're going to name offensive lineman that won't be back, I think Ben Grubbs is going to be one of those guys that will not be back on the offensive line. Marcus Colston, I know it's been well documented that he's probably going to take a pay cut to stay on the team. If you can get him take a big enough pay cut and you can get one of the big-time receivers out there, I'd be impressed. There's two guys out there that a lot of people are going to want, but there's not a lot of elite quarterbacks in the league. I know that word's used a lot, but Drew Brees is one of those elite quarterbacks. There's three big receivers out there right now. Randall Cobb, which is Brandon Cooks pretty much, so I throw him out right now. But Demaryius Thomas and Larry Fitzgerald are two wide receivers that are number one receivers. Right now, do the Saints have a number one receiver? Would you consider a go-to guy? Right now, Marcus Colston's not that guy anymore. He used to be the go-to guy, the number one. Jimmy Graham right now is your guy, and he's a tight end.
Right.
They need a number one receiver. Kenny Stills is a good receiver, but he's not a number one. Brandon Cooks is a slot receiver. I don't know if you can call him a number one right now. They need a number one receiver, and I know Mickey Loomis is fantastic with moving money around to get a big-time name. They blew our minds last year getting Jarris Byrd. I didn't think they had enough money to get Jarris Byrd.
Yes.
They did. This time around, they're going to have to blow our minds again, and maybe they can get in there and get that Larry Fitzgerald or Demaryius Thomas. Because Demaryius Thomas is only going to get 1 year left with Peyton Manning. Right now, the Cardinals' quarterback situation is a mess. Yes. Is Carson Palmer going to be ready for training camp next year? And you know he wants to win that one Super Bowl, Larry Fitzgerald. He hasn't gotten one yet. And Drew Brees, I still think, has 3 to 4 years left. And I think that those receivers will look at that.
You know, what a wasted opportunity last draft with a plethora of wide receivers that have made an impact on this league as rookies. And you know they're only going to get better. Coach, to me, it's the offensive line. In order for Drew Brees to be able to be productive going into the latter years of his career, they've got to get that interior offensive line where they need to be, where they were at once time. It's got to be dominant, and again, it's center and the two guards. What's your take on offense? How do they get back to where they need to be? Do you agree with Garland? It's the wide receiver? Is it the offensive line, or do you have another scenario for us?
The answer to that question is yes. There is no area on the team that cannot be improved, including the quarterback position. And that's why the turnover study that I'm doing right now, there's too many poor decisions that even a great player like Drew Brees makes. So there's not an area of the team or a player that cannot get better, either through securing talent or getting better in coaching them, or getting better in that player playing better. So yes, the offensive line, the center position, has got to be able to improve. This is Tim Lolito's opportunity to step up. They thought that he could do it last year. It was great that Jonathan Goodwin was available and was very serviceable this year. Did an outstanding job for what he had left in the tank.
I would say definitely early in the season. That tailed off after the guy got injured.
Because when you get old, you get hurt, and when you get hurt, you don't recover as quickly. That's all a part of the deal. But thank goodness that the Saints had him even injured, because Lolito couldn't pass him up even when Jonathan was injured. And so Lolito's got to be able to step up. Just overall offensive line play has got to get better. You're looking at the left tackle position with Armstead. That's got to be he's got to be solid there, and I think that he's going to be outstanding as they go forward. The moves that they make at the other positions is going to be very interesting. The Saints are an explosive player away from regaining their touch, and especially out of all places, the running back position, because as good as the running game was this year, and it was a huge improvement, as good as Mark Ingram was, defenses did not have to do anything special to stop the running game. They could play nickel, they could play dime, and just through their base defensive structures, able to stop the running game through technique.
Byproduct of the offensive line or the backs
the
itself?
Explosiveness of the backs. And it's a league that And you see at Pittsburgh last week, Bell was out, and then all of a sudden they couldn't run the ball at all. That is a huge part of the thing. In the NFL, you are most effective when you have a bell cow and a complementary player at the running back position. What the Saints have right now is a complementary and a complementary. They need a bell cow, and especially one that makes the defense on every play limit what they can do defensively, because you can hand the ball to a running back that could take it to the house.
Defensively, guys, again, one of the more critical positions obviously is the defensive line, and it was the position that underachieved the most this season. Can't blame it on injuries. For the most part, they were entirely healthy. I look at it was Foster and Bunkley were the only two guys that were injured during the season. The linebackers are aging. They've lost a step, and you hope you have at least two guys in that defensive backfield, maybe three you can count on in Bird, Vaccaro, and Lewis. Your thoughts on the defense, what they have to do to upgrade this? It's going to be a critical year for this defense, and honestly, for this defensive line as well, to show on whether, again, last year was fool's gold, or are they more like the 2012 Saints?
Yeah, Saints were the 13th pick in the draft. Two quarterbacks are going to go pretty high in Mariota and Jameis Winston. You got to think that cornerback would be the spot that they want in this draft. They're weak at the cornerback spot on the other side. Keenan Lewis is been a Pro Bowl cornerback, even though he's not been picked to the Pro Bowl. I think he's solid on one side. The other side has been I don't know, I'm not gonna use the word disaster, but it's not been up to snuff this year. So I think they're going to draft a cornerback. That's one spot I think they need to. The line, Broderick Bunkley's probably gone. I think they saw enough in John Jenkins. Akeem Hicks had a down season. We pumped him up big time this preseason, and we thought he was gonna explode. Who
wouldn't think he would after last year?
There was a lot of predictions this preseason that a lot of us got wrong, and I got a lot of games wrong this year. I was not right on any of the Saints games, and I thought they were going to win, they lost. When I thought they were going to lose, they won. So I think the Bears game was the only game I got a good feeling, because I knew the Bears were a bigger mess than the Saints were. But so you got John Jenkins, Akeem Hicks inside, and then outside it's going to be Junior Gillette and Cam Jordan. You just hope. Well, Cam Jordan's the final year of his contract. You hope that is in a contract year that he can step up, because he knows he wants that money. I know Junior Gillette's got a big roster bonus coming to him, so he's locked in. But linebacking core, Curtis Lofton in the middle, he's your guy, smart guy in the middle. Outside's David Hawthorne. He's got a big cap number this year. Are they going to get rid of him or ask him to take less money? So yeah, they got some old guys in the middle and in the back. They just need to get healthy in the back. Jarris Bird is a key guy in the back. Raphael Bush. If those guys get healthy in the secondary and they draft well and maybe pick another free agent, I think the secondary get back to where they were. But they got some major problems in the secondary right now.
Coach?
I'm going to go to my go-to guy, Brian Billick, once again. He says, take the defensive players coming out in the draft, throw a dart at the board, and whoever it hits, take him. Because there's so many areas defensively that the Saints need personnel help. So that first draft choice, and the second round as well, you have to take the best defensive player available, because there's not an area of the team that did not underperform. Junior Gillette needs to be a world-class pass rusher. So does Cam Jordan. Or you need another edge rusher so that Cam Jordan can now rush from the inside, because their pass rush wasn't there. The strength up the middle wasn't there as well. But they did do a good job this year of developing backups in the secondary, because we hope that a bunch of those guys can become backups. So Jarris Bird's got to come back and be a Pro Bowl caliber player. Kenny Vaccaro has got to return to the level he was the first year. Sophomore slump. They gave him too much too fast. He got brain locked and was making mental errors and was a step slow because they gave him too much stuff. He needs to be close to the line of scrimmage and making plays in the intermediate area. He doesn't need to be covering deep half on 4th and 10 to where he's jumping the wrong guy, because that turned out to be a critical play against San Francisco in the course of the season. So there's plenty of help that they need, but the defensive line, the interior even, has got to play like an interior of a real defense. So there's plenty of help that they can find there. You got to take, but you can't miss in the first and second round.
I'll ask you guys what I've asked guys on my radio show and what I'm asking now the guest here on the television show. Future of this team, is it an overhaul or a tweak in your mind, Garland?
I think it's going to be a tweak because they still have one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Yes, they're going to lose probably Mark Ingram. And he talked about the running backs. Who is going to be the number one running back next year? I mean, it's Kyrie,
right.
It's Pierre, and Chavaris Cadet.
And Pierre's getting old. I mean, you see the toll it's taken on his body, over 30 now, and he wasn't able to stay healthy the entire season.
That's going to be a big issue, I think, this offseason is getting a running back. But I just don't see them making that many massive moves. They still have some good Pro Bowlers out there, and they spent a lot of money on these guys. I mean, I threw the two names at a receiver that I would like to see the Saints acquire, but I think it's going to be tweaks. I just don't see a major overhaul. I know people say they're $20 million over the salary cap. That doesn't matter anymore because the salary cap number will probably go up.
Yes.
Mickey Loomis will do his magic and move some salaries around, get guys to take less money. So I'm not worried about the salary cap because we were worried about it last year, and they blew the budget last year and were just fine. But I just think it's going to be minor things. I don't see him making a major overhaul, moving a lot of people out. Though losing Ben Grubbs and possibly Marcus Colston, that would seem like a major overhaul. But I think overhaul, I think like 5 or 6 players. If they're losing like 2 or 3, I don't think you say that.
Coach, you got about a minute and a half to go to break. Your thoughts, overhaul or tweak?
You named a bunch of complimentary running backs, by the way.
Yeah.
No ones.
No bell cows.
It's going to be a normal NFL season. 20% of the roster changes. The 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle rules even in NFL rosters. It depends upon what your definition of tweak and overhaul is, okay? They don't have to blow everything up and just get rid. This isn't the NBA where you just dish people out to get salary cap money. It's going to be what should be a typical NFL season. 20% of your roster is going to change, and you've got to make sure that the 20% you bring in is better than the 20% you let go.
Coach Rick Gailee of WGSO Radio and SportsNola.com. Garland, Gillen of Fox 8 Sports are our guest. 866-3200 is the phone number. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Each and every Thursday night right here with our live show, 6 p.m. here on WLAE-TV. You can catch us at 10 o'clock on Friday nights on WLAE-TV, and now a new time on Pelican Sports Television in New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Lafayette, 9 p.m. each and every Friday. We'll take a quick break. We'll come right back. Your phone calls are welcome. We'll switch, talk a little bit about what's going on with the Pelicans and also the LSU Tigers. Don't go anywhere.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
Located on Lake Pontchartrain, Brisbee's Lakefront Restaurant and Bar offers traditional West End favorites, a scenic view, oysters, and numerous tasty options. More information is available at 504-304-4125 or brisbeesrestaurant.com. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House has been shucking here since 1979. Located at 3117 21st Street in Metairie, Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House offers raw, fried, and grilled oysters as well as a range of Cajun and Creole dishes. Enjoy a dozen with a smile. You're watching WLAE, New Orleans Public Television. Find us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. 866-3200 is the phone number. We got a great panel for you tonight. Garland, Gillen of Fox 8 Sports and Coach Rick Gailee of WGSO Radio and SportsNola.com. Before we move to Pelicans, Junior Gillette was arrested this week, domestic abuse, automatic 6-game suspension if he's found to be involved in any type of domestic abuse. Garland, it's so early in the process to know exactly what's going on, but man, look. Junior didn't have a great year, in my opinion. I thought that he really kind of showed that he's kind of a one-trick pony, that he's a situational pass rusher and not the every-down player that maybe they thought he was. And now this, with all the immaturity and unprofessional in the locker room, this kind of lends itself to that again. Whether she was an assistant or a dancer, whatever she was at that point, you don't need the Kenner police coming out to your home.
You're right. Even if Junior gets found not guilty of these charges, just putting yourself in this situation shows a lack of professionalism, immaturity. I know the off season, you're supposed to have a little fun, but this kind of goes over the line. You talked about it a moment ago. His comments during the season about Vilma and Will Smith, completely out of bounds, put a major effect on the locker room. Kind of broke a few people apart there. What he said there, you don't attack your own team and players that are they're still around the team. I mean, Jonathan Vilma did the Who Dat chant in one of the final home games of the year. So Vilma's still pretty tight with the team. Will Smith lives in New Orleans. So that was a bad thing to start with. My dad's a lawyer. My dad scared me away from law school, so I never got into it. But everybody wants immediate reaction when something like this occurs. I just think weighing what the lawyers on both sides said, I think that Junior Gillette, what happened, I think he's not going to serve any time for this. I don't think he gets suspended from the NFL. I mean, from what it seems like, he just needed to pay cab fare, and he refused to even do that. Yeah. I don't know about a dog and an earring. Yeah. I mean, there's two sides to every story. It'll get figured out. But if you ask me right now, I think Junior Gillette, no 6-game suspension. I think these charges go away, and I think we move on with this. And we look back at this as just another moment where Junior Gillette showed immaturity, and he needs to get himself right starting in April when they start doing off-season workouts.
Well, I definitely agree with that part for sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, Gillette's one of the ones who's didn't get the memo about keeping the message in-house, and he was a prime candidate. That never used to happen. Never happened. So that's there's plenty enough failing there. I think we've got a real huge issue here with domestic violence. Because corporate America is a very poor moral authority. And that's what we're asking the NFL to do. The legal system is failing, the legislative system is failing, and we're asking corporate America to punish, in this case, players more than the legal system does. Let's let the legal things play out. And every time our commissioner has to be reviewed, he turns out to be laughable.
Yes.
As a commissioner.
Don't we know that?
Yes, indeed. And it gets worse. I mean, Tagliabue even goes in the opposite direction, and the commissioner's office has declined greatly since the Tagliabue decision now a year and a half ago. So the Saints and all should be out. We are expecting too much out of corporate America when it comes to being a moral authority.
You get a lot of people in the New Orleans area, across the Gulf Coast, that are Saints fans that are applauding that comment, because believe me, they feel the same way about the commissioner as you do. Tyrone is in New Orleans. Tyrone, welcome. You're on Inside New Orleans Sports.
Hey, E, how you doing? Not able to look at the show. Just was told to call in. And two things I want to ask you. One, has the Saints addressed the issue of any of their coaches or have found any of their coaches? And then secondly, I want to talk about that issue of domestic violence being brought upon the NFL to basically be the lead now. And it seems like people want them to be the lead to have this issue stopped.
Right. Tyrone, thanks for the phone call. First of all, nothing has happened with the coaches, except, again, we believe there have been some coaches that have been let go, but none of the officials happened. I agree with you guys. It said that as soon as the coaches start getting shuffled around in terms of head coaches, et cetera, that we'll find out more about what's going on going forward. And, guys, I think you kind of just addressed the domestic violence issue. Am I correct?
Yeah, no doubt.
Anything you guys you can add to that?
No, I just, with Junior, my own personal thoughts is that he's not going to miss time. But luckily for his case, though, it happened in the offseason because Greg Hardy and Adrian Peterson, they were suspended while the court case was ongoing.
Yes.
And even though they were not found guilty or innocent, they were sitting out. If this happened during the middle of the season, there's a good chance that Junior Gillette would be on the sideline right now waiting for that first court case or court trial.
I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Right. And it's not his first time to appear in court will be in late February in Kenner. So at least for his sake, it happened in the offseason because he would be sitting on the bench right now.
I certainly believe that when you want to find out if something is right or not, say it out loud. And if it sounds stupid, it probably is. Let me give everybody a hint. Beating a woman is bad, all right? If you're a football player, or any man for that matter, doing any type of violence against a woman, unless you are threatened, like with your life, That is not a good thing. So we have, as a society, have got to condemn that and not leave it up to corporate America.
Jason is in Houma. Jason, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports.
Hey guys, thank you for having me. First thing I want to do is congratulate you on what I think is one of the really good shows. I think having it at the end of the week, it allows you guys to take the emotion out of the conversation, and you have some time there for it's a cerebral show, and I love the way y'all discuss things. So thank you again for that.
Well, thank you, Jason.
My comment is we'd hope with free agency, I would think Saints, if I was the general manager, would want to come out of free agency with at least an interior lineman starting, a cornerback starting, and then going into that draft with the 13th pick, it allows you to do some really interesting things pending, depending on how things play out always. But I really, my friends and I will talk about this often, and I think I'm probably one of the few people that agrees with one of your guests today. If you could get a home run hitter at the running back position, a guy that could take it to the house every time he touches the ball, the potential, you would make everyone better. Your wide receivers, your offensive linemen would not have to hold blocks as long, in addition to the fact that you would, your defensive players would have to play a little tighter. Therefore, I think it would open up some opportunities for your wide receivers. So that's all my comment really was, and you can feel free to comment on it, but I would love to see them potentially have the opportunity with Sean Payton calling offensive plays to have a true home run hitter at the running back position. That's all I have, and thanks again for the wonderful job this show does to explain to fans, what's going on. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Jason. Appreciate it. And I'll say this: it's you guys, great guests that come on this program every week and give us your insight. Gentlemen, what can you add or answer Jason's questions?
The only exception to the rule with the running back position was Mark Ingram, drafting wise. For the most part, they're not going to probably shell out money for a home run hitter. That's just not the way that Sean Payton operates there. The guys you see on the team are the guys probably you're going to see in training camp. They might add one guy, but he's not going to be making a lot of money. That's just not what they do. They like to get the diamonds in the rough. I don't know who that guy is right now that they could pick up in free agency at running back that's going to be cheaper than get Mark Ingram.
They like to go that undrafted route if they can.
It's worked before. I'm sure they'll find another one, Maybe they get like he'll probably go undrafted as like a Kenny Hilliard at LSU. All of a sudden he might be starting week 7 for the Saints,
I don't think a possibility.
Well, Alfred Blue this past season had trouble even getting on LSU, on the field at LSU, and he's starting when Arian Foster got hurt.
And Jeremy Hill.
Yeah, exactly. And so
good.
they're out there. So look for the Saints probably to pick up a late guy or or an undrafted free agent at the running back spot, but they're not going to draft one at a big time name, and they're definitely not going to pay for one in free agency because they have way too many other issues, and they probably don't put running back at the top of that list as an issue right now.
Coach?
Yeah, player evaluation is what's critical in finding a running back, because you can't take a first or second round choice in today's draft once again and allocate that to a running back. There's too many other holes that you've got to make sure that player is a contributor. But there's plenty of good running backs in this country, and it's the coaching staff, the scouts and scouting departments, front offices and coaching staffs that can identify the player that they can get either in later rounds or in free agency. Because when you look at the top 10 backs, not all of them were number 1 draft choices, or maybe none of them.
Sure, that's right. Logan is in Metairie. Logan, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Logan.
Hey, Eric. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thank you.
My question, I think, is going to be a little controversial, but I'd really like to hear the opinion of everyone on this. Sean Payton making all these calls, don't you think it's time he gives away the play calling? It's predictable. We watched this past season. You can basically pick the call he's going to make that puts us in long distance, second down. Guys, I'm really looking for some feedback on this.
Yeah.
I'm just a fan, but if a fan like me can sit there and call out these plays, I got to imagine the experts out there and the other teams can see them coming as well.
Logan, thank you for the phone call. Gosh, Logan's not the first person over the last few days to come to me and say the exact same thing, that it's time for Payton to take the headset off, be more of an administrator, head coach, and allow someone else to call the plays and maybe tweak this offense some. Coach, let me take you first on that. Your thoughts?
It's a valid concern. It's something that certainly is meritorious of a huge evaluation during this offseason. There's more to play calling than just calling the plays. In fact, game day play calling is somewhat overrated. That's why they have a card that's like this big with all kinds of different colors and all, because they try to determine beforehand what down, distance, field position situations that they're going to call what plays out of what formations and what pass protections. When you look at the number of decisions that have to be made for a play to be called, it has to be done beforehand. What I'm more concerned with, rather than the game day play calling, is the day-to-day coordination. Because what you have to do is first devise a plan and then devise a plan of rehearsal and practice to implement that plan and make sure that that is in sync with what's actually showing up on game days. Are those things in concert with each other? So it's something that needs to certainly be evaluated. I'm not nearly as concerned with the game day play calling as I am with Part A, Part B, and Part C that leads to Part D.
You know, Garland, I just don't think Sean Payton's ego will ever allow the play calling to go to anyone else. Your thoughts?
No, it's going to be Sean Payton. I know Pete Carmichael called the plays when Sean Payton went down with an injury. During the bounty season, Pete Carmichael called the plays. But this is Sean Payton's team. He's not giving up those play calls. Only time he gave up play calling was when it wasn't his choice, when he was with the New York Giants, and that was taken away from him. Probably the lowest point in his coaching career, probably next to the bounty scandal, was losing play calling duties with the New York Giants. I just think that that Sean Payton's not giving it up. It's not happening. Pete Carmichael's not going to be that guy to be play calling. He still has one of the best quarterbacks in the league that can make any play call look fantastic, and I just don't see Sean Payton giving it up.
Well, and I think, guys, that when you look at this, especially this past season, as we had spoke a little bit earlier in the show, a lot of teams emulated what the Saints did offensively. They tried to copy that, great copycat league. But it comes to a point where you've got to self-scout yourself, and you've got to realize what your tendencies are, and you almost have to maybe go, when you've been around as long as Payton has with the same system, maybe you have to go back to the drawing board and start to tweak things a bit so you're not so predictable. So it'll be interesting to see how he does this in the offseason. I think it's going to be critical. Michael is in New Orleans. Michael, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Michael,
hi.
Hey, Michael.
How you doing?
Doing great. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, look, I'd like to ask you, why do the Saints don't draft in-house or in-town players like from LSU?
Michael, I tell you what, that's a question I get constantly on the radio show, and when I'm out and about. When you look at what LSU has done in terms of delivering quality players who can play right away in the pros, they say they love LSU players. They're up there at Pro Day. You were up there with them at Pro Day, but they don't seem to pull the trigger on them.
Yeah, LSU does have quality guys. They did draft one Woods.
Al Woods.
That was a bust. Yeah, that didn't work out for him.
Al Woods. Come on.
Now Devery Henderson did work out for.
But he was a Haslett draft choice.
Yeah. That's right. I guess we're focusing on the Payton regime. But yeah, the one guy they drafted, LSU, did not work out for him. With all the guys from LSU that could possibly go in the draft, seniors and juniors, I'm sure there might be one LSU guy that comes to the Saints. I just think, they weren't going to draft Jarvis Landry. They wanted Brandon Cooks. So
in hindsight, being 2020, they might have done better. Just maybe waiting on a guy like Jarvis Landry and picking up another receiver down the line. But hindsight being 2020,
right? But they wanted probably Odell Beckham Jr. because he could have did two things. They just didn't. Right. They got beat to the punch on that.
And again, hindsight being 2020, you didn't want to give a first and second round pick for him. Right. Now looking at Stanley Jean-Baptiste on what he's been to this team, you might as well given up the number 1 and number 2 and moved up and grabbed him. Just my opinion.
Brandon Cooks is going to be fine, and he's somebody that they needed. They needed somebody that they could throw a 5-yard pass to, and he could take it to the house. So I think that he can develop into that. They needed that explosive player, so I have absolutely no problems with that. As far as you can't draft regionally. You got to try to take the best players that you can when you can take them. But I'm guessing in the NFL especially, too much information is a bad thing. And they probably have too much information because the more information you get on a player, the more negatives you find. And people from further away, you don't have as many inherent negatives. That's why a quarterback especially, if you're going to be drafted first or second or an early first round, you better come out as a junior, because the Matt Leinart syndrome is going to show up, that the more information they get going into that last year, the lower historically you get in the draft because of TMI.
Right. Guys, I want to shift gears to the Pelicans. They've been hovering around 500 the entire season. Last night was a horrible loss to Charlotte, a team without two of their key players. Guys, I have been a huge supporter of Dell Demps and Monty Williams throughout their tenure here. They got dealt some bad cards since they've been here in New Orleans. They got here on the cheap. They were young guys that were kind of, maybe they were taking a little bit of a chance with George Shinn because he didn't have the money to go out and get a top-notch general manager or a top-notch coach, and that we had to learn to kind of grow with those guys. But I think this is a critical month in Monty Williams' tenure as the Pelicans coach. You've got a schedule that again favors the Pelicans, and I think he's got to go on a little bit of a winning streak here, or again, when you look at where he is right now, in my opinion, he's obviously a great teacher, he's a great communicator, but he doesn't seem to have what it takes on the bench to be able to get it done as the guy that's in that first chair as the head coach. You cover a lot of Pelican games, Garland. Right now, when you look at this team, it's supposed to be a defensive coach, but yet they don't play well. They don't play good defense. You've got an all-world player in Anthony Davis, but yet they're treating him as a second-tier player when he's on the court. I mentioned to you in the green room earlier. Larry Bird gets the ball, not Kevin McHale. Michael Jordan gets the ball, not Scottie Pippen. Okay, you go right down the line, and ultimately, right now, when you look at Williams, he hasn't imposed his will on this team to be able to make sure that, again, they utilize the talents of Anthony Davis. And I got to believe that, again, he is on the clock right now.
Going into Thursday night, the 3 games behind Phoenix Suns for that 8th spot. The Thunder are finally getting their wings now that they have Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook back. Both, I would say not 100%, but they're out there playing. And same thing with Eric Gordon. He's out there playing now. He's not 100% yet, but he's getting close. This year, we thought if they didn't make the playoffs, that Monty Williams or Dell Demps would go. I think right now at this point, they're looking tough to make the playoffs, because I think the Thunder are probably going to pass them up. The Suns looked great on television last night against the Minnesota Timberwolves. I watched that game last night. It's inexcusable this team is under 500 right now. Even with Eric Gordon going out, I thought Luke Babbitt, obviously he's not one of the top 3s or 2s in the league, 3 in the league, small forward. But he's still serviceable. To be a game under 500 with that roster. Tomorrow night they got the Grizzlies. They play stronger at home, obviously, than they do on the road right now. But last night, with Lance Stevenson out, Al Jefferson out, Kemba Walker went crazy on those guys. Those kind of losses, those hurt. The Wizards game the other night, they were not in it at all. The entire game. This East Coast road trip, they're probably going to lose to the Raptors. That's a guarantee right there. That's a tough team. That game's not till Sunday next week. They need to win against the Grizzlies on Friday night. Maybe that can set them up for that road swing to the East Coast.
Coach, I promise you, I'm not reacting to one game. I'm looking at the body of work here.
Yes.
And at some point, you either got it or you don't. And right now, it doesn't look like Monty Williams has it.
You're in a profession that winning is what it's all about. And you cannot say as a coach, man, I can teach, I can coach good, but they just play bad. They're too far into their tenure together, and so they're not new at their profession anymore. And so the results in winning has got to be there, because here's what the Pelicans have shown. When they play the game the right way, they can beat anybody. It's a matter of playing the game the right way for the whole game and being able to have that consistency, being able to handle the emotion of the game. Coaching decisions aren't just tactical on the bench, but it's being able to know your players well enough to be able to, for lack of a better term, push the right button, handle the emotion of the game, be able to calm things down when a crisis is at hand, be able to rev things up when players are starting to sag. When the Pelicans do what they're supposed to do, they can beat anybody. If they don't do that all the time, you can't fire all the players.
Right, there's no doubt. I will say the same thing as we shift gears to the LSU Tigers. I believe the most defining offseason since Les Miles has been at LSU. No longer can you rest on your record. No longer can you rest on your championships. You've got to get this quarterback situation figured out, and you got to get it figured out now. And of course, now with having the defection of the chief to Texas A&M and him taking a shot at the offense on the way out, this defensive coordinator position is a critical hire. And the guys that they're going after, who you would think would jump at LSU with all the talent, they are looking the other way and saying, no, thank you. This is a big offseason for Les Miles. Your thoughts?
Yeah, Braxton Miller, I know there's a lot of talk about him transferring to LSU or Oregon, but we don't even know his injury situation right now. He had a horrific injury in fall drills, just throwing the ball. We don't know about Everett Golson, if he's going to transfer to Notre Dame. I'm sure he sat on the other sideline and said, man, I could start for this team right away.
I bet he did.
Yeah. I mean,
heck, I was on TV saying I could start for that team right now.
I put a lot of this on Cam Cameron this spring. Anthony Jennings and Brandon Harris, this is their time right now. If they can't get this figured out right now, then this might be Cam Cameron's last year. This offense sputters again. I put it all on him that he's going to lose his job if he can't get this team figured out quickly. Because Brandon Harris was wanted by a lot of big-time teams. Auburn and LSU were the two of the front runners for that guy, and he wound up going to LSU. So don't tell me that this guy doesn't have talent. Coaches can make these kids good. And look what Cameron did with Zach Medberger. Medberger's a little rough around the edges, but he made him into an NFL quarterback. I think this is on Cam Cameron again to get it done.
Coach, you've coached at the collegiate level. Your thoughts?
We said that back in July last season on this show. That it was an indictment on whether Cam Cameron can really coach or not.
That's right.
When you get right down to it. Because a player should show improvement from the beginning of the season to the end of the season. Still may not be a very good player, but you should have quantifiable, easily identified improvement from the beginning.
At least a package for Brandon Harris, right?
And Cameron said that himself, that I did not do a very good job of coaching either one of them. Somebody's got to. Because LSU is a quarterback away from being a national championship contender. When you look at the rest of the roster, who's coming back and who they're recruiting, I mean, they have a great recruiting class coming up ahead of them. They are a quarterback away from being a national championship contender. And when you look at the two quarterbacks most often mentioned about transferring in, hopefully being able to improve the ones you have, that's critical.
Right.
That you always need to improve the players who are there. But both of those guys should want to come to LSU, because what is the knock on spread quarterbacks? That it's a big adjustment going into the NFL. And if that may happen in this draft right here, that Marcus Mariota, who should be the #1 pick, may not be the #1 pick, because whoever picks him first, which would be Tampa Bay, may be drafting him for the next coach and not for the coaches who are there. So both of them should want to come to LSU, if for no other reason that we could be in a more pro-type system with an NFL caliber offensive coordinator, and my stock as a player will go up.
And a Heisman Trophy candidate in that backfield as well.
If they give him the ball more than 13 times.
Amen to that. Well, and that's one for another show, no doubt about it. Garland, Gillen of Fox 8 Sports, Coach Rick Gailee of, again, 990 AM WGSO and SportsNola.com. Thanks so much for being our guest tonight on Inside New Orleans Sports.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for tuning in to Inside New Orleans Sports. Remember, there's a rebroadcast of this program each and every Friday night right here on WLAE TV at 10 p.m. You can also catch us in New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Lafayette on Pelican Sports Television. That's Friday nights at 9 o'clock. You can also catch me on the radio weekdays, 11 a.m. until 1 p.m. on 990 AM WGSO. You can listen live, download my podcast at ericasher.com. And if you missed any of the previous episodes of Inside New Orleans Sports, you can check those out at ericasher.com as well. Again, special thanks to our guests, Garland Gillen and Rick Gailee. Also to the WLAE production staff, including Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Donovan Joseph, Kenny Juno, Amanda Lyons, and my director, William Hill. Thanks so much for watching Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. We'll look for you next week right here on Inside New Orleans Sports, Thursday, 6 p.m. Good evening.